Okay, so in last lesson we talked about posture and that boring stuff. Today we're going to talk about the basics of what is music. This is something that confused me for the longest time when I first started, um, and so I thought it'd be beneficial to you if we just went through it. First off, music at its basic level is sound, and sound is caused by a vibration. Um, it's a sound when you hit a counter. When you hit the strings on a guitar, you're hitting the string, which is causing a vibration, um, and that vibration causes sound. And we hear this sound, and when done in a certain way, the sound transforms into what we call music. Um, in next lecture we'll talk about what it means to feel the music, and to play with feeling. Uh, but obviously that's another lesson for another time. So going back to what I was saying, so the music is made up of these vibrations, and we call these different sounds, these vibrations, depending on how high or how low of a sound it is. We call it's a note, but we call these different notes different names depending on how high or how low they are. Remember, we're not talking when I say how high or how low, I don't mean how loud or how quiet. I mean how high or how low, how the actual tonal quality of the note. Um, okay, so we give these notes, these sounds, we give them names from A to G. There's A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F sharp, G, G sharp, and then you go back to A. And why that is because remember, we are simply calling a sound a note to help us distinguish it in music theory. Um, Sounds kind of repeat themselves after so long. Um, I'll show you on my guitar. First off, I'll play an E. Now, as I go up, I'll eventually hit an E again. It's the same note, just one is higher than the other. Um, and music repeats itself in this way. That's why we only call them A sharp, and so on and so forth. Now you'll notice that B didn't have a sharp, and E didn't have a sharp, and we'll get to that when we get further into music theory, but just take note of that. Um, so we record these notes on this, which is called sheet music or a score. Okay. Um, this helps us read and understand musical ideas. This is how, when you read a book, you have words which makes up sentences, which make up paragraphs, which make up chapters, and so on and so forth. That is how you communicate an idea. If you're reading a history book, that's how you communicate history. If you're reading, a science book, that's how you communicate science. Similar to how when you're speaking in math, you would use equations and that kind of thing. Well, in music, this is how we record the idea. Okay, um, so that once again, this is called a sorry, let me scoot it over there. It's called either a score or sheet music. Okay, um, so what music is a progression of these notes, these sounds in a harmonious or melodious way, which makes up our music, and that's what it all comes down to. This right here is called a treble clef. Um, in music, there'll be higher sets and lower sets of notes. The piano has on its sheet music, it'll have two sets of these, um, one right over another. The top one will be for treble, and the bottom one will be for bass. Bass guitars only use the bass clef, and guitars, the type that we're using, only use treble clef. Um, So in guitar sheet music, you would see one of these, like except a bunch of them laid end to end with a bunch of notes written on them, with this on the far left side, um, and that is how guitar music is written in sheet form. Later on, we'll get into what's called tabs, and that all that a tab is it's another way of writing down music. It's a simpler way. You don't have to really worry about, you know, timing out notes and different things like that. We'll get into that later. So this is a treble clef and this is a bass clef. This is a score, also called the sheet music. And this is what's called music notation. So what is a chord? A chord is two or more notes played in harmony. And there's different ways you can play them. You can either play them, one by one, which is called an arpeggio, or you can play the full chord, and so on and so forth. Once again, we'll get into that later. I just want you to understand this, because I'll be teaching you how to do sheet music and tabs and all that stuff, and this is really foundational to understanding that. Plus, if you ever want to learn another instrument after the guitar, or in unison with the guitar, you're going to have to know this. And like I say, we'll get more into it there. We'll get more into it, but basically, in recap, coming back to what we're talking about here, is that music is made up of sound, and these sounds we give names to help us differentiate and write them down and relay this information to other people. And we give these notes, these names that we give these notes are named A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and start over again. And these sounds repeat themselves after so long they repeat themselves. So you can hit A and then a little bit later you'll hit A again. I hope that I didn't make that too confusing. This is actually about my 10th time recording this video because I kept getting lost in going into decibel levels and hertz and all that nonsense with wavelengths and whatnot, and I I realize that that's probably not important to you, and that you probably will have no use for that ever. So I had to tone it down. If I still didn't do a good job of toning this down to a level that you can understand, please let me know, and I'll upload another one to kind of explain it a little bit better. So let's look a little look at that. Okay, and music is progression of these notes. Yes, so music is progression of sounds, which we call notes.